Maple Sugar and Baby. I kind of have to go back to when I first adopted Madeline. I had three parakeets in a cage, a mother and two babies, and the father had passed away. There was another brother that had passed away in that family group too. Over time. And then I adopted Madeline in 2013. And somewhere around 2014, 2015, we were downstairs. I fell asleep on the couch watching a movie, and I woke up to really terrible fluttering. And I went upstairs, and Madeline had gotten the parakeet cage open. And not one, all three were missing. And the spare room they were in was very cluttered. So it took me a while. And, there was nothing you can do at that point. They were pretty much, ripped to shreds. A few were fluttering, not a few. One was fluttering. There was two that were dead already and one that was near death. And a short time later, the third one died, So, Madeline was the type of cat that you would bounce a ball. She would leap in the air to catch the ball. She was just she is the epitome of what I would consider to be like the title, the agility cat, if there is such a thing, like an ideal agility cat. Madeline would be like the Olympic equivalent of the agility cat. She's just the most agile cat I can even imagine. And, for a while, I really, I noticed she was more wild than usual. I know I didn't let her out. There were certain things I didn't do around her. And, so far up until that point, we had no trouble housing the parakeets. But, after that point, even though when I moved here, originally in August of actually it was 2000 and, when did we move? 2003, August 2003. So when we moved here, we had one cat and 20 parakeets moving in. I used to be known as the bird lady. Now I'm the cat lady. But my last address, I was the bird lady. I had 20 parakeets, and, over time, parakeets only live 5, 10, 15 years, maybe, if they're really, really long-lived. So, over time, they passed away, and I had been down to my last family of, one mother and two children. And Madeline killed them all that day, and, as much as I love parakeets, the dog office is saying I'm a hoarder, on one hand. But, then I go, point by point, and I go through it, and I see, I can't be that much of a hoarder. If I was a real hoarder, I would have gone out right away and bought other parakeets, I would have kept having litter after litter after litter of kittens, not just had one, I would have just gotten all intact cats, not gone out of my way to pay the adoption fees, pay for the spay and neuter. I wouldn't have all those bait and swap, switch experiences with pet shelters telling me one's elder instead of the other. They try to characterize me this at the hottest week of the year because that's really how the dog officer achieves that conviction rate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any of it is true. It may be elements, maybe a slight portion of it that's true. There's some truth to it, but, it is not the whole truth, so help me God. So, after this happened with the parakeets, I got two quail. Now, for some reason, Madeline, in spite of her wild tendencies, is not bothered by flightless birds as much. It is the flight that stimulates her, that makes her that sound, that makes her go, I have to kill it. And I know this about her. She is a wild, like savannah cat that will leap from the sky and pluck the raptor from the air. If she had to survive, she probably would. She would do her best. And she's very agile. If anyone could land on a bird, could pursue from a tree branch to the ground and land on a bird, it would be this cat. This cat really redefines what we think of as an agility cat. And I am talking about the chickens. I am. I'm getting there. So she kills the parakeets because of flight. Flight stimulates her. We get the quail, and she loves the ground birds. She does, and I think part of it's because of guilt, maybe, because I guilt-tripped her really bad. I did. I wasn't going to hurt her for that, for her natural instincts, and I made her aware that, yes, it's your natural instinct, but we don't do that in the house, and I'm very sad, and I cried, and she felt bad, because, I felt sad about the parakeets dying, and I made her promise me you would not kill the birds, and even though she had promised before and broken it, I forgave her, and I've always wanted parakeets again, but, and I've often walked by them in stores and explained to them I can't have you because Madeline kills birds, But the quail did not stimulate this in her, And since I no longer have my chickens or my ducks, E.T. and Amy, or William and Harry, I decided to get 2 quail, and they were a male and a female, and I named them E.T. and Amy after the ducks that I had lost in 2013. Well, Amy passed away a short time later, leaving Ichi by himself. And these birds they don't advise leaving them alone. It was a long winter, and I don't know, it had to be like 2016, maybe 2017. I don't know, maybe 2017. Was it 2018? I was going through that. It had to be like 2017. I'm going to say, like when I worked at the movie theater, when I had the quail, and I had that oddball gas station job. So the quail must have died like 2017. And it was the winter, so you can't get quail until spring. So I'm advised not to, house them alone because they get depressed and they die. They're better in mated pairs. So I asked at the grain store, when are you expecting more quail? And he said, well, not until May. And I'm like, oh, God, he's never going to last the whole winter by himself. So he said, well, how about this? Why don't you take 2 chickens, 2 little chicks, and, in 5 months, they're not that big, they get a little big, but not enormous, He said in 5 months when the quail come in, your chicks will keep him company until winter's over, and then you come in, you trade back your chickens, and we'll give you some quail. Okay, sounds fair enough. So I take 2 chicks home, and Maple Sugar and Baby. One was a buff, one was a Rhode Island Red, and we waited through the winter. They grew a little bit. The Rhode Island Red passed away. And, I went back to the grain store, said, have you gotten any quail in? He said, no. So, I said, well, one of the chicks had passed, and, it's kind of keeping pace with the quail, but one's kind of going to surpass the quail, size-wise before May. So, and I'll get a couple more chicks. So, and I know this exchange for quail was like 2 chickens, for the quail. So I got 2 more chicks, 2 more little barred rocks. And I named them William and Baby at that point because I had a Rocky guinea pig. And none of them were a rooster, and I kind of kept the Harry name, William and Harry. Harry went with the rooster name, and I just have this thing for Harry the rooster. So I don't know. So I named him William and Baby, a mixed set after my cat that had passed, Baby, and after my chicken that was taken, William, years ago. I had a hen named William because I didn't know the gender of them at the time, and I had already named them William and Harry, the rooster and the hen. And William passed away. Sometimes you get chicks, and that's what happens. You get like 6 of them, and like 4 live, or they just, whatever reason, air quality, cold, heat, sensitivity. Sometimes I'll get one that looks like kind of iffy, and see if you can revive it back to life. And it happens in livestock a lot. It really does. So, now I have 1 quail, a male quail, and 2 female chickens. I have Maple Sugar, the Buff Effington, and I have Baby, the Barred Rock. So, and I wait until May. Well, that year, there's no quail in that year. There is a quail shortage, wouldn't you know it, and I'm like, oh God, and I promised this dog officer I'm not going to take in chickens, like in 2013, I said, I know they don't allow chickens in the park, but I thought, it's only for winter, it's only to keep this quail, safe and warm and healthy so that I can get another size-appropriate bird that you can keep indoors in the spring, I just wanted him to have a mate by spring. And wouldn't you know it, there's a quail shortage. So now I have these chickens that are just growing and growing and growing. They've surpassed the quail companion size, and now I have them in another size cage. And I'm still waiting at the grain store in Salem for the quail to come in. And they come in, but they come in a day I have no money. So I have to wait until the next day to go to, I go in the next day with money. All the quail are gone. Like, this is the thing. A farmer comes in and buys every single quail in the cage and, leaves me nothing. All I need is 2 to exchange for 2 chickens, right? And I say to the guy, when are you getting more quail in? He said, you'll have to wait. I've already been waiting all winter. They should have had me, on a list, prioritizing me, because, I'm still waiting from, the previous year chicken sale to get this quail. You'd think they could put 2 aside for me. And by that time, the guy that I had this agreement with at the grain store, suddenly is not around the grain store anymore. I don't know if he's in the back room or he's been transferred to another location. I'm like, do I initiate this conversation with a new grain store employee at this point? And I'm like, and by that time, I'm so attached to these birds, and these birds are attached to me. And then, when you know it, Eenie passes away. So now I have no quail. And I have chickens. And the only thing I can exchange chickens for at the grain store is the quail that aren't even there yet, And me and these chickens are on this routine. They wake me up every day. They wake me up at 5 a.m. every single day to tell me they have eggs. And Maple Sugar's the proudest of her eggs. She's a really good layer. And Baby comes from what I think is a meat bird farm. Because Baby doesn't know how to nest or sit, at first. And she pecks her eggs all the time. So Maple Sugar was actually a very good surrogate with Baby. She got Baby to the point where she's not pecking her eggs, and she's sitting on them, and she's not only that, but I have this thing with my chickens. I like to teach them to squawk when the eggs are there so that they don't go bad. They don't sit in the cage, and I can get them in the fridge right away. So they have this thing about, squawking until I come to collect the egg. And so the bird that started out, Baby, started out pecking her eggs because of Maple Sugar, had, grown to the point where she's not only sitting on the eggs and not only laying them and healthy, but she's also notifying me when the eggs are there. She's just as proud as Maple Sugar. And I really got those birds to a point of being very successful. What I would consider more placeable hens, The thing that really set me back When the police came and took the pictures, they took the pictures of, like, basically I had cleaned one rabbit cage and one chicken cage one day, and then the next day I was going to do the other rabbit cage and the other chicken cage. And when I clean the cage, I empty them. I put them in the bathroom. I sometimes, like, I'll put them in the shower if they're dirty or something. Give them a little, a little bath, a little freshen up. And I trim the nails because it's too hard. When you trim a bird's nails, especially a chicken, you have to hang them upside down. You have to secure them so they don't hurt their wings. And, you really can't do that in a room full of cats. You need, like, I do it in the bathroom because it's easier. The lighting's better. It's a closed space, so they're less likely to fly around, injure themselves. But you have to be careful with the mirrors, but that's what makes the lighting so good, because the mirrors there, you can see better, you can see the nails. So when the police came, the chicken cages, only half of them were cleaned. So one chicken was cleaned with trim nails, and they didn't take pictures of her. And one chicken was dirty with untrimmed nails. She hadn't been cleaned yet. So, and one was laying fine, one wasn't laying because maple sugar had to be put into a smaller cage than usual. The crate that she would normally be in was unavailable because we were using it for the kittens. And she stopped laying. She was thin, she stopped laying, and her nails had become overgrown, and she needed to stretch out. With enough space and time to stretch out, the bird would recover very easily. She's a good layer, she's a good parent, and I knew she was in rough shape at that point, because we had, like, well, I thought it would be a few weeks of breastfeeding. Well, it's 6 weeks, so for 6 weeks she wasn't stretched out, she wasn't, like, sitting and laying properly, and it wasn't a permanent condition, it wasn't an ideal condition. But, it was something, and I did agree to surrender the rabbits and the chickens because I felt that would be the best way to preserve the cats and the guinea pigs. That would be the best way to have the least amount. I mean, rabbit food and chicken food is not that much. It's a lot easier for an ACO to find a placement for 4 animals than it is to find a placement for 23. And it's a lot easier, much easier pet sitting bill. But you see, this one was doing the Park Avenue Animal Control that year. The one that left 150 guinea pigs in the house in 2013 and 12 cats, was suddenly out on this vendetta to get every single animal. And then in the process, she ends up leaving my guinea pig, Rocky, behind. How could you do that? And then to say that I'm the bad pet owner, that I don't notice things, she's the licensed ACO. That's the person that really should know when she's left a guinea pig behind in 100-degree weather in the hottest week of the year, because she doesn't investigate any other time of the year, not for a pet hoarding claim. They only come out in August, I bet. In July and August, that's when they get active. She didn't mind leaving that guinea pig with no food, no water, no companionship, no family. Not only did he have to witness the murder of 2 of his roommates in the room, and, them being rounded up and stuffed, and, to him it looks like a cattle car rounding up his friends, I am sure. But when I came home, he was terrified. He was terrified of anybody coming near his cage, so I can only imagine what he witnessed. The birds I'm petrified for. I don't know if she just took a lawn-nailed bird picture and then killed a chicken. You know what I mean? Told some sob story about me when, even at my house, even in her smaller cage, she still would have been given that rehabilitation time in my house to stretch out. I knew what was wrong with my chicken. I've taken the poultry seminar. I knew that she couldn't stretch out and she couldn't lay, and that was the only problem. She just needed a bigger cage. Had they given me 4 weeks, would have easily been corrected. And it was. They didn't want me to correct it. They were about designing a crime rate.